Thanks so much for coming to my channel today. Really appreciate that. My name's Dan and we're here to talk about finances, investments, anything else that basically we can make money with, side hustles, etc., and making a better lives for ourselves as well. Now I see a lot of financial channels on YouTube being sort of more states-based, sort of Graham Stephan, Meet Kevin, Andre Jake as well, in regards to everything and anything. But I don't see a huge amount coming out from the UK. So I wanted to sort of jump on that and see how I can help us in relation to what we have to offer within the UK and how we can help grow our wealth and build a community around that as well. So thank you so much for joining that, and I look forward to growing this channel with you guys as well. I'm really looking forward to that, and it really actually excites me, so thank you so much for joining. Today's video is going to be about my 20s and how I feel I wasted those. I had a full 10 years where my finances were not in the greatest state, what I've learned from that and what some of those mistakes were, to try and help you guys who potentially might be younger than myself, looking to understand what issues there are, how they're issues, and seeing if that can potentially help you grow your understanding and knowledge around your finances and help you grow that pot of money in regards to whether you invest it or whether you're saving it or whatever strategy you decide to use, and how you can start building that pot for yourself as well. Some of these personal mistakes are ones that I really do wish that I had known at the time. It really, looking back at them, it's just makes me feel really silly looking back and going, oh, I wish I hadn't done that. But again, it's hindsight, right? And this is why I'm making the video, to have that discussion and really bring to light some of the issues that I had. Obviously, it'd be great to hear some of your insights. Are there things that you wish you'd known sooner? Are there things that you are doing now that you want to change your habits with? So feel free to comment down below, and obviously, feel free to smash the like button and give us a comment as well. I'll read through them all, so please feel free to join in and really get the discussion going. And if there's anything else that you feel that you want me to talk about directly or research and bring back to the channel, please feel free to let me know. I'd love to do that as well. So in my 20s, my biggest issue was I was not financially or money literate. It was not something that I had really gone out and learned or been taught either. I mean, it's not something that we get taught in school about, mortgages, about taxes, and about investing either. It's just not something that comes to mind in regards to that. So my first biggest mistake that I look back at and actually cringe at, knowing what I do now, the biggest issue for me was living month to month and paycheck to paycheck. I wasn't investing any money. I wasn't putting any money aside either. I was literally just burning through the cash I'd made that month. So I was literally getting, £1,500 or whatever it was for some of my earlier jobs when I was, early 20s, late teens, and I was just spending it. It's great to have fun when you're obviously, late teens, early 20s as well. It's good to have fun whenever you can. But if my main focus had been to have fun later on, then that was obviously not the way to go about it. But I literally would just spend through it. It would be things like I just wouldn't keep track of my finances whatsoever. I would not care what my bank said, as long as there wasn't an issue with a payment going through or potentially, buying a car, etc. As long as that was achievable for me, that was something that I would just do. So cars on finance, etc. Not worrying about the APR that was on something that I was buying. Not having a credit card and building up my credit score either was a big issue. But again, it all comes down to not having the knowledge that I am growing now was a real issue. And that's obviously one of my big mistakes in my 20s. I just had no idea whatsoever. Also, the money that I was spending in my 20s, it was not placing to assets that were bringing me money back or earning me money off of my money. They were assets that were just losing me money. Such as I mentioned, I had a car on finance as well, and it just straight off the forecourt. It wasn't brand new. That was one thing I didn't do. I never bought brand new, but it still lost me money. So things like that, where I wasn't earning money or making my money work for me, was another big issue of me, not even overspending, but just spending paycheck to paycheck was a real issue at the time as well. Another huge mistake for me in my 20s was I would use my overdraft. It was something that I saw that it was my money. It wasn't something that I saw and now see that's actually money that I'm borrowing. I would see my bank statement and I'd go, that's fine, I have, £1,500, or when the bank would go ahead and up that to 1,700, 2,000, etc. I'd be like, oh, that's great, I have more money that I can go and spend. And it was, looking back, that is actually really hurtful to see myself doing that. and I really wish I hadn't. But again, it's all part of that journey and learning from that. But I would just spend that as well. So sometimes, and for a big chunk of the years in my 20s, I would actually go through my paycheck, then my overdraft, and then my next month would pay off the overdraft, but I would spend that as well, which obviously was not a great way to live whatsoever. I have nothing realistically to show, especially from my very early 20s to my mid 20s. I had no money saved or anything like that. So that was something that I look back at and see as a huge mistake. And obviously I was paying percentage on that as well. I was paying an APR on the money that I was borrowing from the bank. And the worst part is I have no idea what that was. I was just like seeing it as free money, and I needed to change my mindset to see that that was not my money. I was paying money back to the bank for borrowing that money in the first place. And that was something that I did learn later on and has definitely changed my mindset, and I got myself out of that in my later 20s as well. Another mistake that I made during my 20s was putting at least 2 cars on finance. Now, I did for a long time have sort of second-hand cars that were, £2,000, £1,000, sort of end-of-life cars, which were fine, and they work really well in regards to saving money. But obviously, I did at one point buy an Audi A1. Again, not brand new. They were always second-hand, because I at least knew that driving a brand new car with a forecourt, you're going to lose, sort of 20% of that car's value straight off. Where I was buying cars with maybe 10,000 miles on the clock, etc. But putting those on finance was a big strain on my financial situation every month. I also remember when I had left a job that I didn't particularly like, and my issue was not paying my bills but paying the finance on that car, and having to borrow the money from family members to be able to make that payment, so I didn't lose the car for at least one to 2 months over the time that I was searching for another job. And without that financial strain at the time, I could have taken longer or taken the time earlier to leave the job that I really disliked, without that financial strain on myself. But again, we're talking sort of 8% APR. I didn't really understand the aspect of how much I would be paying over the years I had the car, and then it really stung me with actually both those cars. I had an Audi A1 that was part of a hit and run by another driver and was nearly written off, and then I bought a Fiesta ST also on finance, which although I did enjoy that car a lot, it was stolen from a house burglary, which was a pretty tough thing to go through. My insurance burnt me quite badly on that one. They paid sort of £3,000 under the financing that I had on that car. So that was a tough lesson to learn, where I had to still had to pay for my financial duties on that car's finance, and I didn't have a car at the time either, and I wasn't able to afford another one because I was already spending the money on a monthly basis to pay the car off that had been stolen. So it's a lesson you only learn once, and I definitely took that forward with me as one of my bigger mistakes within my 20s as well. Another mistake within my 20s was not actually building credit properly, not using credit cards properly either. I've actually never properly owned a credit card. I mean, I still don't to this day, but from an earlier age, it was sort of placed into my mind that having a credit card was bad debt, where actually if you were to use credit cards properly and in a financially responsible way, that they can be of great help and really help grow your credit score. I'm very lucky that I have a great credit score at this moment in time, and I did sort of to my late 20s as well, because I had things on finance, because I paid them in time, I never missed a payment, so that grew from that. But I could have chosen an easier way to have grown my credit, and I wish I had, and it's something that I need to look into and we'll be looking into for this channel as well. But yeah, not growing my credit properly. Again, I suppose that comes down to my financial literacy and understanding how finance can work for me and how I can make my finances better at that time was something that I just didn't cross my mind. So that was a huge sort of turning point for me to see how I could make my money work for me in my later 20s and building assets as well. Another mistake that I sort of brushed across a little bit earlier was not making investments or buying assets or buying into assets that made me money rather than buying assets that lost me money. Again, all quite tied into one another, but not having, not coming out of my 20s into my 30s with any assets, you know, no stocks, no ETFs, anything like that, was something that really hit home when I started to learn about it more, really dive deep into growing my financial status, and just realizing that the only thing that I had my money into was my mortgage for my home at the time and value within that, and my growth from that home as well. But I had nothing else. And learning different ways to grow my financial assets as well has been a great learning tool for me as I've moved forward into my 30s. And in regards to that, obviously I've missed out on 10 plus years of compound interest as well. So now I have to invest a lot more every month to be able to still hit goals of retiring if I wanted to at the age of 50 with a financially stable pot that I can live off of as I retire, if that's what I chose to do. I could have made it a lot easier on myself and had a much bigger pot if I had gone from the time I started working a proper full-time job at the age of 18. If I had taken even just £100 of that and started investing and growing that and letting compound interest do its work, that's 10 years of letting my money work for me that I've missed out on. And I can't get that back. Money can come and go, but you can never buy time back. And that was definitely one of the things that really hit me learning more about finances, is that I'm never going to be able to buy the time back. So also think about that in relation to, you might say you've got £10, £20 or what have you to invest on a monthly basis. Even investing that and starting now is better than thinking that you'll need more to invest at a later date. Start now. Start investing. Start getting yourself some stocks or whatever you decide to invest in. Any Bitcoin or anything like that. Just start placing your money so it can start working for you to grow your wealth is the most important thing. Time is the thing that you can never buy back. So think about that. That's something that was a huge mistake for me. And hopefully, even if you're sort of mid-20s and you're watching this, take the time to educate yourself, to look into these things and really start growing your financial pot, because it's going to be really helpful to have the 5, even though you're 25, I've missed those 5 years. Don't do the same. Don't make that mistake that I made. Start growing it, even if it's a tenner a month, £20 a month, £100 a month, whatever you can afford, you should start doing it right now. Now, looking back at some of those mistakes that I've spoken about and mentioned, do I wish that I hadn't have done any of them? Of course, I wish I hadn't have done all of those mistakes, but at the same time, it's allowed me to learn and to grow from them. So the mistakes that I've made has allowed me to become the person I am today, allowed me to invest properly and start growing that pot. I think the biggest thing that I regret out of all of that is wasting my 20s in regards to time-wise, missing out on compound interest for stocks, missing in regards to reinvesting in itself and growing that over those 10 years. I will never get that time back. That is by far the thing that I regret the most. Everything else I've learned from, I've grown and I've moved forward. But losing the time is the biggest thing for sure. So if you are in your 20s, start thinking about it, start doing it, and really grow what you can, even if it's the smallest amount of money. Invest it, learn, educate yourself. It's really important. Luckily now my relationship with money and learning about finance has gotten a lot better. I've educated myself and I'm continuing to do so. And this is why I started this channel as well, was to discuss that. But just keep on learning and educating myself, taking the time to understanding ways to grow my financial assets has been really helpful. And I think it's something that's important to keep growing a positive relationship with money and letting it work for me rather than against me as I get older. Are there any mistakes that you've made that potentially I haven't mentioned there? Anything that you feel others would learn from as well? So please, pop those down in the comments below. Have that conversation. Let's open that up to discussion. What do you think some of my biggest mistakes were in my 20s in regards to my financial growth? and what are things that you're doing right now that has actually helped you grow as a person, and what have you learned that potentially I've not mentioned today in this video. Let's have that conversation. So let's start bringing up this community together and have that conversation. Also, if you have any future content ideas, anything you'd like me to go and research and bring forward, and do some research for you and have that conversation, please let me know. Drop us a comment, drop us a like, and have that conversation with me. I'm really open to any sort of content you guys would like to see. So really appreciate your time today, and I look forward to catching up with you later. All right, thanks.